Now, the BBC has found a pattern of spikes in trades and financial markets ahead of public announcements by US President Donald Trump, including during the Iran war. It's raised suspicions of insider trading, whereby bets are made by people based on information that is not available to the general public. Though some have argued certain traders have become more adept at anticipating the president's interventions.
Let's start with what we know. Donald Trump is one of the most market-moving figures on the planet. When he posts, economies shake. Oil prices swing, stock markets react in seconds. That's just the reality of his presidency. One Truth Social post can wipe billions off an index or add billions back. But here's what investigators started noticing. The markets weren't just reacting to Trump. They were moving before Trump, consistently, repeatedly, with suspicious precision. BBC business correspondent Nick Marsh began digging into trading volume data around Trump's major public announcements. What he found was staggering, and it starts with a single date that should make every ordinary investor furious. March 23rd.
Well, quite a lot of examples of these spikes, Sally. I'll just give you the first one I found, and one of the most prominent ones. It's on the 23rd of March. Trump had spent the weekend preceding that threatening Iran's power plants, much like he is now. But then suddenly, on the Monday morning, before the stock market opened in the US, he said that the United States had had very good and productive conversations with Tehran over a complete and total resolution to hostilities. That's what he posted on Truth Social. So then oil drops by 14%, which is understandable. You go back, though, and look at the trading volume data, and you see a massive spike in the number of oil futures contracts exchanged between about 14 to 16 minutes before the post. That's hundreds of millions of dollars, and those traders will have made a huge amount of money through what's known as short selling. That's just one example of quite a few that I found, Sally.
Trump had spent the entire weekend threatening Iran's power plants. Tensions were high, oil markets were on edge, the world was watching. Then, on Monday morning, before US markets even opened, Trump posted on Truth Social that the United States had reached very good and productive conversations with Iran toward a complete and total resolution of hostilities. Oil prices dropped 14% almost instantly. That's expected. That's the market responding to news. But go back and look at the trading data from just before that post. What you find is a massive spike in oil futures contracts, executed between 14 and 16 minutes before Trump's post went live. Hundreds of millions of dollars in short sell positions, placed by traders who would profit enormously from oil dropping. 14 minutes. That's not instinct. That's not luck. That's not a coincidence. And this isn't the only example. Marsh found multiple instances of this same pattern. Markets moving in precise anticipation of Trump's announcements. Not once, not twice, repeatedly, consistently, with the kind of regularity that makes even the most skeptical financial analyst raise an eyebrow. Now stay with me, because what comes next is even more disturbing. Enter the prediction markets.
And Nick, you've also been looking at these prediction markets, which have exploded in popularity in the past couple of years.
Yeah, so the two main ones really are Polymarket and Kalshi. You might have heard about them. They're websites powered by blockchain. You can bet on anything really, from the weather to baseball to US foreign policy. It's like a very simple yes or no mechanism whether something will happen or not.
If you haven't heard of Polymarket or Kalshi, pay attention, because these platforms have exploded in the last 2 years. Powered by blockchain technology, they let users bet on real-world outcomes, elections, military actions, foreign policy decisions, simple yes or no, will this happen or not. Billions of dollars are now flowing through these platforms. And around US military events, certain accounts have been making almost supernatural returns. Here's the one that stopped investigators cold. In December of last year, a user called Burdensome Mix created a fresh account on Polymarket. Between December 30th and January 2nd, just 3 days, this account placed $32,000 betting that Venezuelan President Nicolas Maduro would be ousted from power. The very next day, Maduro was seized by US Special Forces. That account collected nearly $500,000 in profit. Then it changed its name and has never placed another bet since. Gone, silent, vanished.
Donald Trump's son, by the way, Donald Trump Jr., is an investor in Polymarket. He sits on its advisory board as well as on Kalshi's advisory board. We have contacted him, incidentally, but no response. But yes, on these predictions markets, people have been making an awful lot of money around American military action around the world. For example, I saw one user called Burdensome Mix set up an account on Polymarket in December last year, and between the 30th of December and the 2nd of January, this account placed $32,000 on Nicolas Maduro, the Venezuelan president, being ousted. The next day, he was seized by US Special Forces and the account made nearly $500,000. Then it changed its name and hasn't placed a bet since. There are also similar bets being placed on US strikes on Iran, for example.
Similar bets were placed around U.S. strikes on Iran, again, before public confirmation, again, with extraordinary accuracy. Now here's where the story gets even more tangled. Donald Trump Jr., the president's own son, is not just a user of Polymarket. He is a financial investor in the platform. He sits on its advisory board. He also sits on Kalshi's advisory board. The BBC reached out to Donald Trump Jr. for comment. No response. The White House was contacted directly about these allegations of insider trading. No response. When pressed previously, White House spokespeople have strenuously denied any form of insider trading connected to the administration. One spokesperson told another outlet that the administration does not tolerate any official illegally profiting from inside knowledge. But denials aren't data, and the data tells a very different story.
We spoke to Polymarket. It told the BBC that it sets and maintains and enforces the highest standards of market integrity, and it said that it proactively works with law enforcement to do so. And in March this year, both Polymarket and Kalshi outlined new rules to crack down on insider trading.
New rules. In March, after the pattern was already well established, the question that nobody in power seems willing to answer is sitting right in front of us. If ordinary citizens had access to presidential decisions before they went public and used that information to make millions, they would be in handcuffs. The SEC would be involved. There would be congressional hearings, criminal charges. So why does it feel like the rules of financial crime only apply to people who aren't already inside the building? What does it say about power, privilege, and accountability when the pattern is this clear and the silence from the top is this loud? Drop your thoughts in the comments. And if you want the stories the mainstream press buries before they go viral, subscribe to ViralSpillz. We're just getting started.
And what about the White House? What has the response been from the White House to these allegations?
No response when I contacted them. Spokespeople in the past have made it clear that they do strenuously deny any form of insider trading involving the White House. There was one who told another outlet last month it didn't tolerate any administration official illegally profiteering off of insider knowledge. There's always the possibility, Sally, that traders are getting better at predicting when Trump will make a U-turn or market conditions signal he might intervene in some way. Traders get ahead of that. You can't rule that out. But it's the consistency of these spikes, and it's how often it happens before Trump says something that has got people raising eyebrows.
To be fair, and this matters, there is another explanation being offered. Some analysts argue that certain traders have simply become extremely sophisticated at reading Trump, his behavioral patterns, his political pressures, the market signals that precede a policy U-turn. Maybe, they say, the smartest traders have cracked the code on predicting his moves. You can't rule that out completely. But here's the problem with that theory. It doesn't explain burdensome mix. It doesn't explain the 14-minute window. It doesn't explain why these spikes happen so consistently, not occasionally, not randomly, but almost every single time, right before Trump speaks. Polymarket, for its part, told the BBC it enforces the highest standards of market integrity and proactively works with law enforcement. In March of this year, both Polymarket and Kalshi introduced new rules specifically targeting insider trading on their platforms.